Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, do you remember Bernie Sanders coming out, for the most part, has been fundamentally without PACs. He's been running his own campaigns, that famous $27 per person. Democrats have not really engaged on why they fail so much. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the hopefuls, the people who are trying to run in the presidential election coming up in 2020, has not engaged that themselves. Meaning, talking to their God at 3 in the morning, they would probably confess all sorts of stuff. They wouldn't necessarily tell you, the public, who's looking on this or looking on this. One of those things that they've seemed to hit upon is, hey, the public doesn't trust us when it looks like we're taking a bunch of money. Because it seems that when we're taking a bunch of money, we're just doing the bidding of the people who are paying us. And they feel some kind of way about that. So let's not take corporate PAC money. So many of these campaigns who are talking about running for president, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, are talking about not taking any corporate PAC money. Now, Sanders didn't take it anyway, and I don't remember where Warren fell on this, but Senator Warren also has said she's not going to take corporate PAC money. Here's the dirty secret. Corporate PAC money doesn't really make up a huge amount of their campaign. So if they're looking for a fig leaf to put out to the American audience saying, look, in the same way that Bernie Sanders is not taking that money and he's raising the individual donations, we're also not taking that PAC money, we're raising individual donations. Here's, like I said, if it's not a huge amount of your campaign, it's not that painful for you to do. So say, for example, if I'm raising $1 billion into my campaign, and let's say 6% of that money was coming from PACs. I can get away with that 6%, especially if I believe that I can't win the primaries and have this behavior. Meaning, I need to give something away. I need to give some fig leaf to this lefty base who says they're not going to vote for me otherwise. Hillary Clinton lost because a lot of people decided they couldn't trust her and didn't vote for her. We need to find ways to get people trust. Got it. Let's say we're not going to take corporate PAC money. This is The Intercept. The Intercept does this great article making the point that it's not much of your campaign. It's not all that hard to do if it's not a majority of your campaign. So, right here. Senator Kamala Harris became the latest lawmaker to swear off all donations from corporate political action committees, telling a radio host in mid-April that she made the move after being asked about it at a town hall by a constituent. Harris joins 5 other senators who have vowed not to take corporate PAC contributions. Senator Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, Elizabeth Warren, Mary Cantwell, and Bernie Sanders. With the exception of Cantwell, these senators are regularly floated as 2020 presidential contenders, giving them political incentive to declare themselves independent of corporate money. Many Americans have grown increasingly distrustful of big businesses' influence in politics since the Supreme Court 2010 decision. It was before that, Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission. In fact, Harris cited that case when explaining her decision not to accept cash from corporate PACs on The Breakfast Club, a New York radio show. I think that money has such an outside influence in politics, and especially with the Supreme Court determining Citizens United, which basically means big corporations can spend unlimited amounts of money influencing your campaigns, right? We're supposed to have an equal vote, but money has now really tipped the balance between individuals having equal power in an election and a corporation, Harris said. I've actually made a decision since I've had the conversation that I am not going to accept corporate PAC checks. I'm not. Swearing off corporate PAC money can be one of the positive steps a lawmaker can take towards reducing the corrupting influence of money on politics, but it's far from enough. The reason is that money from PACs, corporate or otherwise, comprises a relatively insignificant portion of the senator's campaign contributions, raising questions on whether curtailing donations from corporate PACs will really make a difference. Critics think it doesn't, noting that the biggest threat of influence comes from wealthy donors who don't funnel their cash through PACs. But for politicians looking to seize on public discontent with the influence of money in politics, the decision makes for an effective messaging ploy. I keep saying, the gentleman who wrote the article, Bernie Sanders has his foot on the throat of the Democratic Party. And my argument has been, no, a person with the foot on the throat of the party, meaning conquering something, having your foot on the throat with your chest and your chest hair beaming into the sun, and you have your staff with a Spartan stance. That's not the same thing as these guys are just giving messaging. It's just messaging. It's like okay, we need to find political tricks and political ploys to get these people to vote for us because Hillary Clinton lost a reality show host and we do not want to repeat that. How do we get that public back on board this burning barge? I know they don't like this thing of money in politics. They think they're buying us. Let's throw them a bone. Let's throw them a bone. There's no meat on that bone, but let's throw them a bone nonetheless. It looks good from an optics standpoint. Benjamin Page, a longtime researcher in political decision-making at Northwestern University, agreed. Refusing to take corporate PAC money makes a nice symbol, and I suppose we should give it some credit, but far more money comes from wealthy individuals, he wrote in an email. That is much more important, and I believe it tends to corrupt both Republicans and the Democratic Party. It's not just your belief, dude. It does. It does. And to make the point clear, 10.37% of Cory Booker's campaign funding came from PACs. Just 0.62% of Cantwell's funding came from PACs. 6.595% of Gillibrand's came from PACs. Kamala Harris only 4.89%. Bernie Sanders 1.73%. And Elizabeth Warren just 1.4%. 62% of Kirsten Gillibrand's fundraising has come from large donations. 64% or 65% of campaign funding has come from large donors. 73% of Mary Cantwell's large donors. 72% of Cory Booker from large donors. Now, University of Massachusetts Boston professor emeritus Thomas Ferguson is one of America's leading academics who studies the influence of money in politics. He is the brain behind the investment theory of party competition, which says that politicians are essentially driven by their donors, their true political base. Yes! Yes! I don't know who this guy is. I've never read this book. That has been my theory. I've stuck to this theory, and I'm glad to find that there's a book saying that I am right. I think this is logic. This makes logical sense. You have pitchforks, so you have dollars. You tell a politician that 90-something% of the people who run in political races win depending on who has the most cash. Then what are you going to do? If you don't have any pitchforks there pressing at your heels, you're going to lean towards the side with the most cash, since the majority of the people with the most cash tends to win. Now, the dynamics for this is somewhat different in presidential election, but when you go into that, knowing that money is the nuclear bomb in this competition, you do everything in your power to get as much money in your war chest as you can possibly get. That makes more logical sense than not. 70% of the time, if not more, is spent raising money. Think about that. 70-something% for Democrats and Republicans, 75% of the time that they spend is raising money. It's not doing laws or talking to constituents. It's raising cash, talking to donors, begging for money. I'm just saying, if that's your world and if that's your life and you realize that you need as much money as you can possibly get in order to win that election, what do? You try to get as much money as you can possibly get. That is your modus operandi. Now, so logically, that makes sense. You have a system that floats on cash. The people who get that cash are going to lean towards the side of who's giving them the cash. Think of it as you're working at a job. If you're working at a job, aren't you going to comport yourself based upon the way that the people are paying you? Otherwise, you're not going to continue to get paid at that job. Fact is, that money can either be used against you or that money is used for your benefit. The problem here that the guy is making is the majority of that money is coming from single donors or single sources, not from corporate PACs. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. The corporate PAC is only a small element of the money that they get in these elections, and it's not the major thing that creates the influence. That's the point that he's making. Let's keep going. He doesn't think much of senators disavowing corporate PAC money. It's an absolutely cheap gesture that means nothing. That's why they do it. Ferguson said in an interview, he points out that corporations could almost run their money through the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, and that these senators haven't disavowed the committee's backing. A close look at Gillibrand's and Booker's top donors makes just clear how little it matters these senators swear off corporate PAC money. Gillibrand's 11th largest donor is Morgan Stanley, which did not give a penny of its money to Gillibrand through the PAC. Instead, Morgan Stanley employees donated $40,000 to her campaign committee as individuals. Of the $814,463 that she received from the securities and investment industry, just $70,500 came from a PAC. Does that make sense? They're not swearing off these PACs because something changed in them, because they've taken this new tenor in regards to politics. They swear off these PACs because they understand running in the primary with these lefties who are somewhat animated, that would be a drag on them, and they don't believe they can get through the primary process without doing that. All of this is political posturing. None of this is because there's anything real that's changed in the people who are doing it. They're getting rid of the corporate PACs because they can. That's the appendage they can throw off. That's the bone that they can throw to get people to think that, oh my God, see, they've stopped taking corporate PAC money. They've changed. They've changed. Bernie Sanders has conquered the Democratic Party. Yes! Yes! Bernie Sanders has won. No, he hasn't conquered anything. All of this is optics. All of this is optics. So, great job, Intercept. Who wrote this? I didn't go through the entire article, but I'm putting an article at the bottom for you to read. This is Zaid Jilani. Great job. The Intercept continues its great work. All right, guys. Just a heads up. Be aware of the people who are calling themselves lefties in these races, because there are going to be a lot of people calling themselves lefties. This is one of them, Kamala Harris. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. Thanks, guys.